Mr. Fowers? Autumn, are you ready?
Yes.
5. Good morning, everyone. We're here to conduct business for our Weber County Commission meeting, dated this Tuesday, the 30th of January 2018 at 10 o'clock. In lieu of our invocation today, we'll have a brief moment of silence, and if we could start with that right now. We'll do that right now. Very good, thank you. Our Pledge of Allegiance this morning will be led by Jared Anderson, and our thought of the day will be given by Commissioner Gibson. Mr. Anderson.
Please rise and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. As far as the thought today, I wanted to share with you, a couple of weeks ago, I had the opportunity to attend a funeral for Thomas S. Monson, who was a mentor and friend, not friend, but a hero of mine, I should say. Someone who I did have the opportunity to meet a couple times and really wanted to develop some of the positive traits that he had. Just a tremendous individual. One of his favorite poems is one that he shared often portions from. And as I was actually driving down to the funeral, I heard this quoted as he had recited it in one of his general conference talks, and it kind of struck a chord with me, something that I thought was relative to some of life's challenges that are placed in our way, and it was something that meant a lot to me today. So let me just read it to you. It's a poem by Douglas Mallock entitled "Good Timber." It says here, "The tree that never had to fight for sun and sky and air and light, but stood out in the open plain and always got its share of rain. Never became a forest king, but lived and died a scrubby thing. The man who never had to toil to gain and farm his patch of soil, who never had to win his share of sun and sky and light and air, never became a manly man, but lived and died as he began. Good timber does not grow with ease. The stronger the wind, the stronger the trees. The further sky, the greater length, the more the storm, the more the strength. By sun and cold, and by rain and snow, in trees and men, good timbers grow. Where thickest lies the forest growth, we find the patriarchs of both, and they hold counsel with the stars, whose broken branches show the scars of many winds and much of strife. This is the common law of life." So I just want to share with you a thought as I have the opportunity to talk with my wife at times and share with her things that are going on, and she reminds me sometimes that we ought to be grateful for the challenges in our lives. And sometimes I disagree with her. Sometimes but most of the time I know that she's right. And as I think of this good advice by Mr. Mallock and reiterated by President Monson, it reminds me that whatever it is that we struggle through or challenge through, that it truly does make us more of who we want to be and give us strength. And so I was grateful for that reminder from someone who I appreciated so much. So there's the thought.
Thank you, Commissioner. Great thought. Moving on to item E in our commission agenda will be a presentation. A Weber County Business Study by Matt Hilburn from EDC, Utah. We've asked Holland Wilbanks to introduce Mr. Hilburn.
Hi, thank you very much for having Matt today. This is really exciting for me, and this process started about a year ago, where we really started looking at the data and the research behind what Weber County is comprised of, what our business mix looks like, and where we should move going forward. And it's really exciting to see some of this data roll out, the direction that we've already gone, and the accelerator we've got on right now to really grow and build Weber County in a smart way. So I'm glad to have Matt here. We polled all the businesses in Weber County, and he's going to talk a little bit about the results that we got back from that study itself and what that means and how it complements some of the data that we've been gathering over the last year. So you'll hear us talking about data behind our economics and our business growth ad nauseum, because it's great information and it's really going to help us produce and grow the county in a really smart and great way. So with all that, here's Matt Hilburn from EDC, Utah.
Thank you, Holland, and thank you, commissioners, for taking a moment to let me talk to you. I apologize in advance for leaving my office so quickly that I left my suit coat there, but appreciate an opportunity to talk to the three of you. To give you a little bit of background...
It's a good thing, Matt, that this is not the Utah State Senate.
I know, I understand. I'm used to having the tie a little looser most of the days at work, and so a little bit of background. I'm the Vice President of Research and Marketing at EDC Utah. Weber County's been an excellent member at EDC Utah for many, many years. My prior work was in marketing research. I was my degree is in econometrics, and I was a marketing research statistician for a very large analytics firm. So when I moved to EDC Utah, I said, hey, let's do some cool analytics here. And so we've started doing that with different cities and counties around the state. And I need you to know, I assume you do, how you compare to other counties in economic development. You guys are doing an excellent job. We meet with counties and cities all over the state. Some are above the others. Some are in need of some resources and some help. And Weber County is doing a really excellent job. And it's always been a pleasure for us to work with Weber County. A little bit of background. There it goes. The progression of this presentation, we'll first talk about what the research objectives were. Why did we do this study for Weber County? What was the purpose of this? We'll talk about the methodology, importantly the findings, some possible solutions, and we'll skim over some summary statistics. So the purpose of this study was, first and foremost, identifying the key characteristics of businesses in Weber County. How do Weber County businesses look? How do they feel? What are their barriers to growth? We all know that it's a very sad day when you learn that a very important company of your area is going to be leaving. How can we identify those barriers before they leave to hopefully address them? Understand the value proposition that Weber County has. We all know a lot of great things about Weber County that we can talk about, but what are some specific things that the existing companies feel are a value proposition for doing business here? And again, try to identify some solutions. EDC Utah sent an online survey using Qualtrics to all the businesses in Weber County that had a legitimate email address from business licensing. It went to about 5,000 companies. We got about 1,000 responses, which is above average response rate for research, 24% response rate. And working with Doug Larson provided a few incentives for those companies if they wanted to participate. The results of this study are all statistically significant. If there are any nerds in the room, it's statistically significant at the 95% confidence interval with a margin of error of plus or minus 2.52%, which again is much above the industry norm of 5%. We did some detailed statistical analysis, including some machine learning, artificial intelligence, particularly multinomial logits, regressions, ANOVAs, again for the data nerds in the room, some dimensionality reduction, all just to help you understand some of the work that went into this. When we look at the sampling compared to the population of businesses in Weber County, it's very close. You'll notice the orange bars is the percent of respondents with employees from anywhere from 1 to 4 employees, 5 to 9 employees, etc., compared to the blue bar, which is the actual population of businesses within Weber County. Extremely close sample size, which again leads us to believe that we can consider the results statistically significant. And even more so when we break out the employee size from a broader group of 1 to 19 employees versus 20 and larger, the sample size in statistical terminology is nearly identical. When we look at industry, the differences were very similar. There are a few highlighted areas there where, for example, we had a lesser response of construction, architectural, and engineering companies than are actually in the community. On the other hand, we had a greater sampling of professional and business service companies than are actually in the community. Nevertheless, again, in statistical terms, it's a pretty close distribution by industry as well. So jumping into the actual findings of the study, this may look bad, but this is actually pretty normal. 44 to 79% of the companies within Weber County would choose to expand within the county. So that means 21 to 57% of the companies, when presented with an opportunity to expand, would not choose the city that they currently reside in. However, of those that may leave their home city within Weber County, 18% of them would still stay within the county walls. And so if you're in Ogden, perhaps you'll move to another city within the county, but you'd still stay within the county, leaving 21 to 39% of companies that might leave the county.
Could I ask a question?
You bet.
On that? So the 44 to 80 or 79%, is that, why the gap there? Is that just in the way that the questions were asked, that somewhere in between there that there's some movement? Or
That's a great question. We asked, if you had an opportunity to expand, would you expand within, let's say it was Ogden, would you expand within Ogden, the city that you're already in? Would you leave, or would it depend? And so the gap is the difference between those who said, yes, I would leave, and also adding the people who said, it depends. And we'll break that down in a further slide here as well.
sometimes I get ahead of myself.
No, that's great. That's great. This is sort of a summary of some of the findings that we'll discuss. Weber County's Net Promoter Score. A Net Promoter Score is a research term talking about how likely a individual or a company or an organization is to recommend a product or anything. And the way that this is determined is by asking respondents to rank, for in this case, Weber County, on a certain scale, and then you create a calculation that will identify which of those people are promoters of the county, who really love doing work in the county, versus those who are detractors, who do not like doing work in the county. To have a Net Promoter Score above 0 is very good. Salt Lake City, we did this study for Salt Lake City, and they have published their results. I don't recall exactly what their Net Promoter Score was, but I believe it was about -20. So in comparison to Salt Lake, the Net Promoter Score is significantly higher. The top reasons that a business may choose to not expand within Weber County are, number one, customer base. That's a good thing. That's not necessarily a bad thing. So a company says, I currently have a location in Ogden. I'm going to be expanding. I'm not going to expand within Ogden. The number one reason, because I've saturated the market. I simply need to expand outside of the market. So that's not a bad thing, that your number one reason is that they're just trying to reach more customers. That's okay. The second one then is the one that for Weber County purposes is the number one issue, which for them is that they can't find affordable real estate. So what they're saying is, I would like to expand within Weber County, but the real estate that I need is not currently available. This is a significant issue because it's difficult to build, lots of square feet of spec, and that's a challenge that every city and every county faces. Nevertheless, this was their largest issue. Regulatory requirements was listed as number 3. Location access is not ideal. Interestingly, the top reason businesses choose to expand within Weber County is good location access. So what that means is that the companies who are struggling with access are needing to leave, but there are other companies who find access is meaningful for their business. Access is defined differently by different people. If you need access to a significant portion of the population, perhaps the middle of Salt Lake County would be more ideal. If, on the other hand, you need access to rail and infrastructure and supply chain, perhaps Weber County would be more ideal. So this is dependent on what your business is all about. Existing customer base, high quality of life. Weber County has an excellent quality of life. So, research objective 1, identify the key characteristics of Weber County businesses. Here we see that 44% of Weber County businesses would expand within the county if given the opportunity. 21% said that they would leave, and 35% said it depends. It depends on a number of issues. The depends is probably the greatest opportunity for Weber County to look at. If a company has made their decision that they're going to leave, or when faced with an expansion opportunity they would leave, it can be challenging to convince them to change their mind. However, the depends category is where this can be really meaningful to make policy changes. This is very small. I realize it's kind of challenging to see this. This is simply an analysis of those businesses who said that they would stay within the county as opposed to those businesses who said that they would leave. We're looking at the difference in how they ranked Weber County over a number of different metrics. And in particular, you'll notice at the very top, pro-business environment, the reason that bar is the largest is because it means that the gap between a company that says that they would stay and a company that says that they would leave, that gap is larger across pro-business environment than any other factor. The businesses who want to stay here think that Weber County is a really great pro-business environment. The companies that want to leave do not think that Weber County is a really great pro-business environment. This is where we start seeing some potential marketing or policy changes where if we can help companies understand Weber County actually is a really great place to do business. So if we can help the businesses understand that, then that can help influence their decision to stay within the county. This will be really great to probably look at later and digest it in more detail, but we look at the differences in how companies ranked, all these different categories, regulatory requirements, arts, entertainment, environment, etc. The key takeaway is looking at that left graph. The items to the top are the items where Weber County is scoring really well with the companies that want to stay here and is not scoring well with the companies that want to leave. So these areas are areas where Weber County would want to either market or educate or make policy changes. Pro-business environment, regulatory requirements, attractiveness for talent recruitment, arts and entertainment environment. Those are things that companies who like staying here feel like are really, really great. Same thing we look at, but now we're looking at more of the employee amenities, things that an employee might want from a community. Again, looking at the far left graph and the items at the top. Proximity to outdoor recreation. This is something that the talent, the labor pool in Weber County really, really appreciates and wants to stay here for that reason. Transportation services are really great here. Arts and entertainment, again, came up as well. This is probably one of the most meaningful graphs in the presentation. you'll notice it's a little complicated. On the left, we have a scale that says change in likelihood to recommend. And across the bottom is factor ranking. So if we look at the left graph, top right quadrant, it says pro-business environment. The reason it's to the far right, pro-business environment is to the far right, is because businesses ranked it very high. The reason that it's up to the top of the graph is because if you have a business that ranks pro-business environment, say they rank it a 3 on a 1 to 5 scale. If they rank it a 3, and you can convince them next year through your marketing, through policy changes, that now they want to rank it a 4, by making that 1 point change in how much they rank pro-business environment, it changes their likelihood to recommend Weber County by nearly 1 point as well. And this is the success metric that we're interested in. What's your likelihood to recommend this city? The greatest opportunity for a city to attract business is for its local businesses to be promoters of the location. So we used this study as a way to identify how we can improve a business's likelihood to recommend Weber County. Pro-business environment is the greatest one. So continuing to help your local business understand that Weber County is a pro-business environment, either through education or policy, will improve their likelihood to recommend the city, whether they're currently promoters or detractors. On the right, we see their ranking of how important certain metrics are to them. So most important to them was transportation services and products. There's a lot of manufacturing in Weber County. Perhaps that has something to do with this. Supply chain. They want to make sure they're close to rail, close to air. A lot of those types of, even road infrastructure for products. It was the more important transportation services are to them, the more likely they are to recommend the city. So now looking at employee amenities, you'll notice we don't see a lot. Oh, it looks like there was a formatting issue that took place here. There's not a lot in the aggressively market category for employee amenities. But what is highest is the affordability and cost of living. We notice this at EDC Utah. When we're working with businesses and they want to move to Utah, they'll usually think about Salt Lake City first. Then they come and they realize Salt Lake City is the most expensive place to operate in Utah. So all of a sudden they start saying, well, what's around Salt Lake City? Now they start looking at Provo and Ogden. And that's when businesses start recognizing, wow, there's actually some really great assets to be in Weber County or to be down in Utah County, because we still have access to the talent in Salt Lake County, but yet now we get to operate for a significantly reduced cost compared to Salt Lake County. So this is a very meaningful aspect. As well, arts and entertainment came up again. As an economic developer, arts and entertainment, we never think about that. We never think about quality of life. Businesses don't generally move somewhere because of quality of life, because they hire employees from within the community. They're not bringing employees with them. So they're not worried about that. But what we're realizing is that businesses that are already in a community, they care about quality of life. Because in order to retain good employees, their business needs to be in an ideal location. So this matters. Arts and entertainment matters to existing employees and employers. This was an analysis that identifies how likely a company is to expand within a community and what factors will improve their likelihood to expand within the community. So previously we were looking at how we could improve their likelihood to recommend the community. Now we're looking at how likely are they to expand within the community. The number one thing that keeps popping up is pro-business environment. If a community feels that Weber County has a pro-business environment, it increases the odds that they will stay and expand within Weber County by 56%. Also, talent attraction. If they feel like Weber County is a area that will facilitate talent attraction, it increases their odds of staying within the county by 40%. Now, when you look at what's important to a company, if supply chain is important to a company, really important to a company, it decreases their odds of wanting to stay in Weber County. This was a surprise to me because Weber County has a really excellent supply chain infrastructure. Nevertheless, this would be an area to look at Where is there must be a supply chain gap for some of these businesses. Where is that gap, and how can we address that? Affordability also, if affordability is really important to a business, that decreased their likelihood to want to stay within the county. Also a little bit surprising given that it is cheaper than Salt Lake. So remembering that these aren't necessarily needed policy changes, sometimes it's education. We have a tendency to think we're in a bad spot. And so helping a local business understand, hey, if affordability is important to you, you're going to have a hard time finding a better place in Weber County. Let's show you what the costs look like in Salt Lake County. So sometimes this is just a matter of education.
Go down that road with supply chain as well. Give me some examples of what that might be.
For supply chain, let's say you're an aerospace parts and products manufacturer. You build wings for a Boeing, and you need an advanced composites material that is only found, and in fact is expertly found, in Austin. And then you realize, well, gosh, in Austin they also have other polymers, and they have machinists, and they have a lot of welders. And then all of a sudden you realize I would be better off in Austin because I can be close to all of my needed suppliers. So this could be a great example where you have a certain number of businesses who are just saying, there's a gap in the market, we really need this advanced composites company, and they're just not here, but they're in Austin, so we're going to move to Austin instead. Research objective number 2 was to determine the primary barriers to growth. Number 1, finding competent, skilled labor. That's not a surprise. Utah's unemployment rate is 3.1%, which is lower than the national average, and is so low that it's very hard to find employees. This is not necessarily something that you can do a lot about. It's a national problem. It's particularly an industry problem, specifically in IT and machining and welding, things like that, skilled trades. Very hard to find people in those areas. What you can do is you can look at relationships with the ATCs and colleges and identify, is there some sort of a gap between what our universities are outputting and what our community needs? As an economist, I know that cycle changes quite a lot over the years, so it's hard to make some plans and policies based off of today when we know that tomorrow the unemployment rate will rise and this won't be as big of an issue anymore. Nevertheless, you always want to have an excellent pipeline of talent. Number 2, growing the customer base. That's probably not something to worry about. They're saturated here. They want to move somewhere else. Controlling costs is possibly an educational issue, unless there are some extreme costs in Weber County that I'm not aware of. But to my knowledge, Weber County is a very affordable place to do business. Navigating regulatory environment, etc. If you look at industries and how those barriers change by industry, growing the customer base tends to be amongst these 3 primary business categories: education, health, leisure, hospitality, professional services, etc. Finding competent, skilled labor for those categories: manufacturing, leisure, construction. Controlling costs tends to be an issue for outdoor products and real estate. We all know that real estate companies want to be able to have lower costs. And regulatory environment, particularly for commercial real estate. Research objective number 3. What is Weber County's value proposition to businesses? Well, no surprise, it's pro-business environment. We need to help businesses within Weber County understand that this is a pro-business environment. There are businesses here who don't understand that. And helping them understand that will increase their ability to stay in the county and their likelihood to recommend the county. Competent, skilled labor. You'll notice that that dot is in the left quadrant, which I've labeled strengthen or educate. It's 2 different things. The issue with competent and skilled labor is either that employers don't know how to find competent and skilled labor, therefore it may not be an issue. It may be an issue with employers not being able to find them. They don't know how to find them. Or it could be an issue that doesn't exist here. So the issue is, do you strengthen or do you educate? And when it comes to competent and skilled labor, I think the issue is to strengthen it, which again is challenging in this low unemployment market. Pro-business environment, on the other hand, I think is an education issue. I don't think you need to strengthen your pro-business environment. I think that education would be more appropriate. So those are for business factors. What types of business factors should we be marketing? When it comes to employee amenities, what should we be marketing to talent, to labor? Affordable and low cost of living. That's an education area. We need to educate that this is a low-cost area to live. Commute times. You notice this do not market category is where the majority of those dots fall. That doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't market them at all. If you'll notice on the right, the reason that there's two graphs here, the graph on the right, the scale goes from 1 to 5. That's the full scale. The graph on the left, I've zoomed in. And the reason it's zoomed in is merely to see where you should, put your focus and your attention. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about how Weber County has great commute times. It's just not it would be nice to have some categories that were ranked a little bit higher. Okay, so Net Promoter Score. This is what we talked about earlier. This is an incredible singular metric that helps you understand how you're doing as a county. You have 38% of your businesses are actively promoting Weber County, which means if I walk up to one of those 38% and I say, I've got a business, I'm thinking of setting it up in Weber County, should I? They will say, absolutely, yes, you should. 28% would say, absolutely, no, you should not. And 34% would say, it just kind of depends on what you're looking for. That 34% is a huge opportunity. It can be very challenging to get the 28% to become promoters. But the 34%, it's much easier to get them to become promoters. And the way to get those 34%, everything we've talked about so far, is really to address the concerns of those 34%. If we help them understand that Weber County is a great pro-business environment, we're cheaper than you think we are, we've got a great quality of life, so it's a great place, a great location as a business to be able to attract talent. If we can convince those 34% of those things, we can convince them to become promoters. If we can get that promoter score to go up from 38% to 50%, your ability to attract businesses to the community extends exponentially. Again, Salt Lake City, who doesn't really have a lot of problems attracting businesses, has a negative Net Promoter Score. Businesses go there because they feel like they have to be there. They have to be there because it's the center of population. In Weber County, you have all the assets you need. It just becomes a matter of convincing those companies you'd be better off here than Salt Lake County. Now, I'm not trying to pit Weber County against Salt Lake County. Salt Lake County is one of our great members as well. The difference is that their value proposition is different than yours. Your value proposition could be easily sold.
Can you give us a few other comparisons? Is there anybody else that you would dare say?
Unfortunately, Salt Lake is the only other community we've done this with. Okay. But yes, to me, Weber County and Provo, to a business looking to move to Utah, are almost the same. They think about Salt Lake because it's the biggest, they want to be there. As soon as they realize, oh, I can go outside of Salt Lake, a business thinks about Weber and Provo the same. They've probably never been to either. It's just a dot on the map, roughly the same distance from Salt Lake, each one of them. So to them, you're on equal footing to Utah County. Why then does Utah County win more businesses than Weber County? I don't think it needs to be that way. When you look at Weber County, especially if you combine Weber County and Davis County together, and you look at every economic metric compared to Utah County, Weber County and Davis combined against Utah County are almost identical. Job growth rate's almost the same. Population is almost the same. Labor force participation rate is almost the same. So there's no reason why Utah County should be winning more than Weber County. Now, Utah County is different. They have a lot of differences. They have a boom right now in IT that Weber County doesn't have. So the question is, what expertise does Weber County have that they should be selling? Weber County has great aerospace parts and manufacturing. It has great manufacturing in almost every field. It has great outdoor products. It doesn't necessarily need to be Utah County. IT doesn't necessarily need to be the focus. But how do we gain the same success that Utah County is having? We should be able to do that in Weber County because it's relatively the same from an outsider's perspective. And beyond that, there's no one else. I mean, there's no one else. Logan is, people who want to go to Logan, it's a very different value proposition. St. George, very different proposition. Tooele County, very different. So really, to me, the main competitor that you're competing with in similarity is Provo, and the main competitor that you're competing with that you don't know you're competing with is Salt Lake City. You can attract a lot of the businesses that Salt Lake City is getting. Okay, finally, what can you do? I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm sure I'm going over. Identify potential solutions. This is very minimal because generally speaking, this is a conversation we have with you all and everyone else in economic development. We've worked a lot with Doug, worked a lot with Holland. This piece is going to continue to be more detailed moving forward. Nevertheless, the highlights are that the pro-business environment is really the biggest thing to market here. Number two, arts and entertainment. Who would have thought? But this makes a big difference for labor.
I would have thought.
Okay. I'm very uncultured, you know, and so for me it was, I'm a data nerd. I'd rather look at a spreadsheet, despite my wife's attempts to help me become more cultured. Arts and entertainment matters. And it doesn't just matter to employees, it matters to the businesses. The businesses get that this matters. No one in the country that I know of is really talking about this. Utah has figured it out, and we need to do more about it. We need to talk about how affordable Weber County is. You get the same assets that you could get in Salt Lake County, and yet we're more affordable. Commute times. I was surprised that that was such a big issue. In Salt Lake City, no one talked about that. Yes, Salt Lake City doesn't have as good of commute times, but it's got the tracks, it's got, you know, Front Runner goes nearby. In Weber County, it was specifically mentioned that the commute times are really excellent. Challenges to overcome: real estate options. How do you just get a developer to come in and build a bunch of spec? It's a challenge. But we have learned, especially at EDC Utah, that businesses want to move to an existing location. They don't want to build. They don't want construction. That happens especially with big companies. Adobe will build. But companies within your community who have 20 or 50 employees, they want to move, especially if they're expanding, they want to move somewhere nicer that's already built. Probably Class A space that's sort of an upgrade from where they are. So real estate options would be the greatest issue to overcome. Regulatory requirements, number two. Now again, I think this is more of an education issue to overcome rather than reducing regulation. Nevertheless, it should be looked at. Supply chain and affordable cost of living. Again, that's a marketing issue, an education issue. So that's it. There's some summary statistics there. Commissioners, thank you for giving me some time to talk. What questions do you have for me?
Commissioners.
I'll let the other commissioners speak first.
Excellent. Okay.
We've gone over a lot of this, and so I'm super excited about it.
Excellent.
I asked a lot of questions along the way. I apologize.
I'm glad you did.
But I think this is tremendously helpful because in order to make good progress, I think we need to know what we're doing well and what we can do a little bit better. It is interesting to see the difference between, different, just that people see things differently, right? From how businesses see things to government. I'm involved in both, and so I try to see things as broadly as I can. But even within the business sector, how some people would see things differently. So it's helpful to me to have that information. I just want to ask one question, and you might expect this coming from me, but I think we probably we didn't see any numbers on agriculture. I think mainly probably because generally they don't have business licenses, so we may not have as much contact information. But did you have any feedback at all as to the value or importance to the industries that you surveyed regarding agricultural communities?
Great question, and to your point, nothing was mentioned, and I think a large part of that is simply response rates amongst farmers and individuals who maybe don't have business licenses, etc. This was sent to just those who have an active email address within business licenses. So I'll look a little deeper, but to my knowledge and memory, there were no agricultural companies who responded and no mention of agriculture by any of the other businesses.
Okay. We continue to see, I think, throughout the agricultural community, consumers asking for locally produced food. I mean, it becomes a huge issue for consumers, and everybody may define local as different, in a different way. Some people think that it just means the United States, and some people want to see it much closer. In fact, we tend to see a measurement called Food Miles Traveled. That's interesting. People really want to see their food grown and produced locally, and from a business perspective, I think it's one thing that some people miss. They have agriculture. We know has over a $400 million annual receipt here in Weber County alone, and so when we apply the multiplier effects to that spins that around within our economy several times, we know that's a huge part of our business community that sometimes is forgotten. But there's also when you break away from the numbers, you also see an awful lot of intangible with our agricultural community. You see suburban communities that are built completely around wanting to be close to a rural area and yet close to an urban center, which I think we are tremendously blessed to have that diversity within just a few minutes, where a lot of urban areas with a lot of people do not have that connection. And so I just happen to know a lot of people who value that highly in their decisions as to where to locate a facility. But anyway, one of the things that I also wanted to touch base on and just ask about, as far as these businesses that were in that matrix of how excited they were to stay, in my experiences have been along the lines of, I think that number would be increased quite dramatically if they really knew individually that they were appreciated and wanted. And that's one of the things that I think this information will help us to do. I met with a business just the other day that just said, gosh, we just don't get the feeling that anybody knows about us or cares about us. And that was like a shot to the heart to me, because I'm like, wait a minute, you are important to us, and we want you to stay here. This is a long-term business partner who's been here with their family for many, many years and was looking at going outside of the particular city that they're in. And we were saying, no, please don't do that. And here's why. And we gave them all the stuff that you just shared. But do you see any connection? How important is it, I guess, is my question, to have that type of outreach? I mean, how do we make it so that nobody ever says that in Weber County?
It's extremely important. Some of you may know Steve Cruz. He was the previous CEO of the Utah Foundation. And he was hired about a year ago to go to California to do some consulting work with California. And in his farewell speech, he said, in Utah, what are some of our biggest issues? And he named 3 of them that are commonly talked about. And it was something like, I think, education and air quality and something else. And he said, and we're always talking about how horrible we have it because of these 3 things. And he said, you know what the 3 priorities in California are? And I think, if I remember correctly, it was sex trafficking, violent crimes, and I don't recall what the 3rd one was. And his point was, we have a tendency to think that we have it so bad. And he said, now that I'm going to California and I'm looking at these truly horrible issues, he said, all of a sudden, I'm not quite as scared about Utah's education. Your point is very valid, which is that if a company is left to their own to feel like, you know what, nobody cares about me here, the taxes are high, can't find good space anyway, they're just going to leave. If, on the other hand, you come in there and you help them understand, we need you here, you're a valuable member of this community, then all of a sudden, not finding the Class A space that they want may not be as meaningful. So in isolation, when you do statistics, you look at moving one factor without considering the other factors, then all of a sudden it becomes a very meaningful thing. But if you introduce a new factor, such as we're going to go do an expansive outreach, that can make a huge improvement as well.
Ms.
I just want to add something, because all the information that Matt has brought has just been spot on and has really helped us form and drive the direction that we're going. And as a part of that, and there's been a very aggressive BEAR, which is Business Expansion and Retention Program. So we haven't gotten to all of those businesses at this point, but there's a very concerted effort to sit down one-on-one with our business community and have that same conversation and let them understand the type of information that we know and we're aware of who we are and where we're going, and also understand from them, because as you said, Commissioner, people see things differently and they see their world in their own through their own eyes, so that making sure that we're addressing those issues and that we are present and a partnership as these businesses. Our customer base and our business community are truly our best assets right now. And if we can take those, expand upon those, they'll continue to help us attract new business.
Perfect. Thank you.
Part of the other presentation we'll have here in just a few more weeks.
Right.
Yeah, with that, the rest of the data that'll be forthcoming. It's really exciting. Any other questions?
Just quickly, I think, again, for purposes of time, we've never had this information before. We've never had the opportunity to be as intentional as we can be now. If you look at a span from that you were talking about, 40 to 70%, that's a big span. But the information that we are gathering allows us to break that up and be intentional to these points that you're talking about. What their concerns are, and then for that industry or even that specific business to address that specific issue with them. I am super excited. I hope that you get a feeling that this is more than just business development. There's a huge component of community development that is encased with in the work that EDC Utah is doing, and the information then helps us to be more intentional on what we do in different areas: education, arts and culture, business development. And so we'll continue to report this, but I hope that what you feel is that there's a very it's a strong partnership with EDC Utah, and if you didn't catch this, there's no other county doing this besides the work that Salt Lake County's done. And we're at the leading edge, and we have more to bring forward on what we're doing in economic development that will be as exciting, if not more exciting. So thank you.
Yeah, there will be, in addition to the numbers, and we appreciate the partnership with EDC Utah. We're excited for those additional numbers to come forward, and that'll be within the next few weeks. We're all on that. So for those of you watching or in the audience, stay tuned.
One more comment for Matt. We have found over the years, as we talk to people from outside of the state, that they understand what a great place we live in. One of the challenges we have is sometimes convincing our neighbors right close around us who have not been here for a while, maybe Salt Lake, Utah counties, what a tremendous place we live in and work in. And Matt, I just want to use that opportunity because you are a tremendous value to in your organization to Weber County, and we're so grateful for that partnership.
Thank you, Commissioner.
But I want you to know that this is not just a talking point for me. This is what I believe. This is what we believe. And honestly, the beauty of being a Weber County Commissioner is being able to be a chief cheerleader for our community. It is a tremendous place to be. I mean, a tremendous place to have the ability that you've described to own and work in this community, to recreate, have all of the natural beauties that we have, and I could go through the whole presentation. I mean, it's almost unprecedented, I think, in the world, and what an opportunity it is for us. And I think you said it correctly when you said a lot of times it comes down to helping people to understand and educating people, because it's just almost unbelievable what we have at our fingertips. So we hope that that partnership will continue, and that as you have opportunities come to EDCU, that you'll be able to communicate them well, knowing that it's not just something that we're selling, that it's something that we truly believe and understand and goes deep in our thought process. So thank you.
You bet. And as a data guy, it's easy for me to do. It's easy for me to help some of these businesses understand. Maybe you should look a little bit north. We consider ourselves location agnostic in that we're a state entity, and therefore we let the customers drive where they move. But our obligation is to help make sure that they find the best fit. So even though we don't recommend a community over another community, we definitely provide them information. And we definitely help them understand, you do know that there's some other places here you should be thinking about. We highly value our relationship with Weber County as well, and has been said, Weber County is much above many of the other areas in Utah, which is exciting for us. This study also helped us at EDC Utah to understand some value in Weber County that perhaps we weren't as aware of in the past. And by the way, meeting with Holland today and learning that she goes trail running 6 days a week because it's 5 minutes from her doorstep. In Salt Lake, we often talk about how you can go skiing in 45 minutes or less. Little did I know you could go running in, just a few minutes here. So Weber County is a huge asset to the state of Utah, and it's one of the reasons why people look at the state.
It takes me 17 minutes, actually.
Okay.
To ski from doorstep to...
Is that right? From your
17,
house?
and it's, yeah,
That will change our data.
true story. Okay, great. Thank you again, Mr. Hilburn, Ms. Wilbanks.
Thank you for your
appreciate the
time.
presentation. We'll move on to item F on our agenda, our consent items, which is a request for approval of warrants number 1334 to 1339 and 425019 to 425310 in the amount of $2,707,488.59. Item 2 is a request for approval of purchase orders in the amount of $1,420,118.19. And item 3, a request for approval of the minutes for the meeting held on January 23rd, 2018. Any questions, commissioners? I'll turn the time over today, and Mr. Hack is at the state legislature, to Commissioner Ebert.
Really quickly, I'll go over the PO and the check runs. We have 34 POs for $1.4 million, which 95% of the POs were for the library, $1.35 million for books and materials and furniture. My guess would be, well, it's not my guess, I know what it's for the Ogden Main branch as they prepare to open that facility. We had 398 checks for $2.7 million. 27% or $721,000 was for employee health and dental assurance. 19% or $501,000 were for corridor preservation on Harrison Boulevard. 14% or $377,000 was escrow release for Powder Mountain and Ridge subdivision. 13% or $341,000 was again for the Harrison Boulevard construction costs. And 7% or $191,000 were for paramedics' monthly payment. That is all we have to report today.
Very good, commissioners. Entertain any questions or a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent items as read.
Motion and second. Any other questions? Call for a vote. All in favor to approve the consent items? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item G on our agenda. A request for approval of a resolution by the County Commissioners of Weber County appointing members to the Weber Morgan Health Board. Commissioners, in your packet today is there's a resolution there that basically because of the end of 2017 and the events that took place there, I'll read this resolution quickly. Whereas the Weber Morgan Health Board, or Board of Health, consists of 11 members, 2 of which are appointments made by the Board of Commissioners of Weber County or the Commission, based upon recommendations from the Weber Area Council of Governments, or WACOG, and whereas WACOG has recently recommended Mayors Leonard Call and Lee Dickamore to be appointed as members of the Health Board, and whereas the Board of Health members Dave Holmstrom and Ken Johnson have terms that expired on December 31st, 2017, and whereas the Commission desires to appoint Mayors Leonard Call and Lee Dickamore and reappoint Dave Holmstrom and Ken Johnson to the Board of Health. Now, therefore, pursuant to the provisions of Utah Code 26A-1-109 and the Board of Health bylaws, the Commission hereby appoints Mayors Leonard Call and Lee Dickamore and reappoints Dave Holmstrom and Ken Johnson to serve as members of the Board of Health. Each appointment shall be for a term of 3 years and will expire on December 31st, 2020. These appointments shall be effective upon adoption of this resolution. The Commission's administrative assistants shall send copies of the resolutions to each of the appointees of the Weber Morgan Health Department. It's dated the 30th of January 2018. Questions? And I realize that there could be some questions here, but
None for me.
I don't have any questions. I don't think we received any other applications, did we?
not to my knowledge.
Obviously, we have the COG appointments, and those are fairly straightforward, but seeing that we don't have any other applications.
Resolution 8?
I will make a motion that we approve resolution number 8.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second to approve Resolution 8, appointing members to the Health Board. If there's no other questions, I'll entertain a vote. Those in favor?
Commissioner Gibson,
Aye.
Commissioner
Hebert? Aye.
and Chair Harvey.
Aye. Sorry, that wasn't a vote, but thank you, Fatima, very much. That resolution number 8 passes, and we'll move on to item 2 on our agenda, request for approval of a contract by and between Weber County and Staker Parsons for restocking fee incurred as a result of changes to the plans. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning, Commissioners. Just for the minutes, if we would just want to make sure and change that from contract to change order. That wasn't a contract, it was just a change order for the original contract. Very typical change that you see on large projects like this. They pre-order a lot of precast items, and then as we go along and we have to change different things on designs for different reasons as we go along on the roadway, then some of these precast items need to be sent back. So it's just a restocking fee for that company that they'll typically charge. I don't know if you have any questions on that, and I sure hope this is the last one we will see for this project.
Commissioners, I'd entertain a motion or any discussion.
Motion we approve the change order specific to Staker Parsons restocking fee.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no other question, call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank
Motion
you.
carries. Discussion in item number 3. Mr. Brown, discussion and or action on the reduction of impact fees. The reduction of impact fees.
Sounds friendly.
Reduction, yes.
Sounds business friendly to me. Tell your neighbors.
Wolf Creek Resorts, the golf course, is building a new pro shop. They've placed that pro shop on a parcel that's 25 acres, which makes the stormwater impact fee quite expensive. It'd be $137,925. They've asked for a reduction, as we have done in the past for other places that have large parcels and build new buildings. If you look in your packet, there is one there that says the square foot of the building plus 40 foot around the building for hard surfaces areas, which would reduce that storm drains down to $4,179. Eric is here with Wolf Creek if you have any questions for him. And
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for the presenter or for Eric?
Is this something we've commonly done before, or have we ever done this before?
yes, we have done this before for GSL and Western Zirconium. Anytime our ordinance is designed for a lot that would be for a typical business where they would encumber the whole lot with parking and so forth. Our large business areas, they don't do that. So it's kind of a glitch in the system for businesses with large parcels.
Thank you very much.
Assumption then is that you are not creating a storm runoff event if it's a large parcel where there is soil to absorb that. So
Especially the golf course, they're going to try to retain as much as they can so they can use it for irrigation.
So just to follow up then, I just want to make sure that we're being consistent. I think that was the intent of Commissioner Ebert's question, and and that there's some kind of a methodology that goes to how we apply this. Even though
In the past, we've agreed on the size of the building plus the 40 feet around for hard surface.
perfect, and that's what the note here is, the 40 feet around building.
Mhm.
That's where you come up with that number. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Great. Are there any other questions for Mr. Brown? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the reduction of the impact fees.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to improve the option that, or just to reduce the impact fees. If there's no other questions, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Motion carries. Item number 4, Commissioner Gibson, this is exciting. This is a resolution between the County Commissioners of Weber County creating the Weber County Veterans Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. We may have tired out our veterans to the point that they had to stand in the back of the room, stretch out a little bit. We apologize for that. It's always good to have these great heroes in our community and in our meeting with us, and I know that there are 3 of you in the room for sure on the back row, but I would assume that there are others, and I want to thank you for your service, whoever you are. It's been interesting over the years. As I wrapped up service in the state legislature years ago, since then many people have asked what was the most important thing you did. And it's interesting, sometimes the things that you're in the middle of don't seem to have all the importance that you find later on in your life as you think about it. But there's no question that a lot of those things that I look back on as being valuable were almost always in regard to people and how people are affected. I had some very tender experiences of being able to be an advocate for people that I knew were working hard and maybe not being treated as appropriately as they should have been. And one of my great moments of reflection and gratitude comes that when I was a freshman, a couple of good veterans who won't be named but are standing in the back of the room approached me about a project that was very, very important to them. And I didn't really know how to help at the time, but that I was smart enough to say yes and to understand that there was something to what they were saying and something important and valuable that we were missing. I had that desire, but I didn't know the details of how to make that work. And over the next few years, we went through ups and downs and hills and valleys and failures and successes to get the veteran nursing home in Weber County funded and make it a reality. And I am so grateful as I look back that project was successful, that I was able to play a small role in its success, and that individuals like Frank and Terry were tireless and were not willing to give up until something happened that was appropriate and honorable in this case. And most of all, I was overcome with a deep sense of gratitude, not just for them looking out for their fellow veterans, but for the work that they did in the line of duty and in harm's way. And it is just a tender experience for me every time I walk through those hallowed and sacred halls of that home. As I recognize, you can just almost feel the sacrifice of family members and good individuals. I have never had the opportunity to serve in that manner, and I don't know how much more I can understand without having actually been there. But I will tell you this, I am super, super grateful. And my heart is full. I realize that there are times when your heart being full isn't enough, and when you have to take some action and do things that are hard and important to show that gratitude and thanks to those who have served us. And so I'm hoping that there is something that we can do here as part of this opportunity to take more action on the county level. Sometimes when we think of veterans, we think of them as a federal responsibility and maybe even a state responsibility, and yeah, those things are probably true to a certain extent. But the reality is, these are people who live in our community, who are our neighbors and our friends. I'm thinking specifically of one right now that Mayor Taylor, Mayor of North Ogden, who I'll be honest, I can't imagine a wife and 7 children saying goodbye for a year or more, and the sacrifice that must mean. I think as a community, as a county, we owe something to those folks who are willing to do that, whether they actually take the bullets or not, there is a responsibility that we have as a community to do more, I think, locally to support our local veterans. And so with that, I'm grateful that Mr. Scow and Mr. Mon approached me with this idea that there is more that can be done at a local level, and we can coordinate, we can do more, but it begins with putting a structure in place that allows us to first of all, as we talked about with economic development, understand what the challenges are and understand what the problems are, because like I said before, having not been there myself, I may not totally get it until I hear it from someone who has been there. And so I asked for this resolution to be prepared. I would like to ask both of these gentlemen, Mr. Mon and Mr. Scow, to come up if you have a minute and tell us how you might see this Veterans Advisory Committee functioning and what some of the opportunities and needs might be right here in our own community.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
It's always a good day when you can have veterans recognized, and appreciate your kind words for those of us who've been doing the Lord's work, looking after veterans. It's a noble calling, and certainly the Veterans Home you mentioned was a great project. And so, I listen to your presentation about economic development. I would just be mindful of the fact that that home cost $20 million. Millions of dollars flow into Weber County every year because of that home, because the VA pays about $100 a day for each veteran times 120. And so if you look at the wages and salaries paid by the contractor and the money from the federal government, $7 million a year. So the Veterans Home didn't cost, it actually pays. And of course it saves the families of veterans about $2,000 a month, and the nursing home care can be upwards of $6,000 a month, so it's a great deal. As I had the opportunity to work with the State Veterans Office, one of the things I became aware of is that Utah is below the national average in a percentage of veterans enrolled in VA healthcare. We're below the national average in percentage of veterans who are receiving compensation and pension for their service-connected disabilities or injuries. So it was a constant quest to help get the word out. Even our nursing home vans had a big banner out. Thank you, veterans need help, have questions, website and phone number. And the purpose for me to reach out to Commissioner Gibson and to the Commission was so that we can continue to do the job of making veterans and their families be aware of their benefits and those kind of things. Just yesterday I drove a World War II veteran down to the VA in Salt Lake City to get some hearing aids, and that's one of the benefits. Hearing aids are expensive, $2,000 plus, and the VA provided them to him because of his VA disabilities. So we hope that we can help get the word out through the various vehicles that the county does, through the linkage with the cities and such, to help get the word out whether you're injured 1945 and never filed for an increase up till today, and probably receiving 10%, should probably be receiving 100. So there's those who have filed in the past, those who have not filed, and those kind of things. And we just want to kind of help get that going, and we feel that the county could help us do that and get the word out and help those folks who are hurt or injured as a result of their military service. And so that's kind of the thought process. And sadly, so many of these folks are so humble and so modest. The World War II guys especially are reluctant to do that. But we think this would be a good thing and improves the quality of life for these veterans as well, and for their families. So that was kind of my thought process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank, anything to add?
I'm sorry.
Anything to add, Frank?
It's a pleasure to be on this side, is not that side of the podium.
For the record, I'm Frank Mon, and I live in Pleasant View, Utah. The guy standing behind me is the reason that I got involved in veterans work. I had a business, I had church obligations and scouting obligations, but he called and said, you know, there's a problem. We've got veterans who don't know what they don't know. And that, I think, is the genesis of the Weber County Veterans Advisory Committee. Think about the impact on somebody's life if over the years their hearing has deteriorated, not because of the boombox in the back of somebody's car, but the impact on mortars landing within 25 feet of that particular veteran and exploding to decibel levels around 200. Or being in your foxhole. Mine happened to move wherever I wanted it to. But a very interesting evening was spent with 175 millimeter cannons set up 40 feet behind me and my soldiers. It will get to the point where you guys will have to speak really loud before I understand what's going on. But I'm grateful that you're doing something that will help the veterans of all wars who don't know what they don't know. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Ott, do you want to say anything? No. Okay. Well, I hope that those of you in the audience today and those watching online can understand a little bit of what I love about these two great men, and well, three. I consider John a great example as well, and many of our veterans. And I think it's just important to remember that that greatest generation is leaving us way too quickly. We have a tremendous debt of gratitude and responsibility to them, but this responsibility doesn't end with them. There are veterans today, every day, who continue to grapple with unthinkable responsibilities and unthinkable things that they have seen and witnessed and been a part of. And I think we have a responsibility to them as well. It is not easy to keep our nation safe and secure and free, and it comes with a tremendously high personal cost. And my goal is to do everything that I can to help one person at a time, one veteran at a time. And I thought that it was interesting to hear Mr. Mon make the comment about his soldiers. I think that he recognizes them as his friends and his family and those individuals that are important to me, and they are all, every one of them, important to me. And so I look forward to moving forward with this resolution. The resolution that was passed, or that was put in the packet, commissioners had a section 5 that, that's the wrong one too. On section 5 had a typo, or not a typo, but a paragraph that was inadvertently added. And so I do have a new copy that has been brought, just eliminating section 5.3 that was not intended to be there. I got a hold of Mr. Wilson, and he was able to send that up. So I appreciate
5.3 is facility evaluation recommendations to be eliminated.
My thought, I think that was probably, he verified that was kind of just drafting error. My guess is it was in a different resolution that got copied and pasted without realizing it. So that section will be removed. I can pass this around. You're more than welcome to look at it. But basically what the intent is of this is to provide this committee which will work with the county to utilize experience and expertise of veterans to benefit the community and to advise the county on needs of veterans and ways in which those needs might be addressed. The way it's drafted, and I'm open to any kind of input or change in the way that it's drafted, but the way that it's drafted now is that it would consist at least now of 5 members appointed by the commission, that we'd receive recommendations from veterans and other familiar organizations, that each committee member shall have 1 vote in any term of action, that these members shall be for a term of 3 years, and that they be staggered so that they not all expire at the same time, with members expiring, terms expiring on the 31st of December of the year in which those terms would expire. Because they are all positions in high and civic nature, all members of the committee shall serve as they so often did without compensation, but may be reimbursed for actual expenses. So I'll leave the rest of the resolution for you to look through with any changes. My hope is that we would approve the resolution today creating the advisory committee, and that then we would direct our staff to post notice of intent to appoint these members as soon as possible, so that we could have that. It has been our tradition to accept those nominations and then to draw from a hat or a box of some kind showing what members would serve for the longer periods versus the other. So that's done in random fashion, and that we get this advisory committee up and running as soon as we possibly can. Any questions or comments for me, commissioners?
No, I think that we're all on board. I think we've been on board since day one. It's good to see this come to fruition. I think words are extremely important, and it's extremely important to continually recognize our veterans, but words only go so far. And especially with our veterans, sometimes they can't hear the words, but they can always see the actions. And so this starts a process of really creating actionable items to help our veterans. So I'm appreciative of the great work that's been done in this community, but I anticipate the great work to come. And I believe having a group that's truly working with us hand in hand to really create and craft the direction is extremely important. So you can see actionable work being done within the veteran community. So thank you very much for your long-standing dedication, and I know the dedication into the future.
Frank, Terry, thank you.
Work is always work.
For those that don't know, Mr. Mon is a Purple Heart recipient.
I could see.
Very proud. Great example.
So if there's no further discussion.
No. Fatima, let's call for the vote on the resolution, please.
Need a motion first.
We need a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution of the County Commissioners of Weber County creating the Weber County Veteran Advisory Committee. Resolution number 9.
Second.
Okay.
Commissioner Gibson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ebert?
Aye.
Aye. Resolution 9 is passed. Thank you unanimously.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 5, Mr. Olson, a request for approval of contract by and between Weber County and Weber County Dairy Days to hold the 2018 Weber County Dairy Days at the Golden Spike Event Center. Mr. Olson.
Good morning, Commissioners. We'll try to do these fast. This is for our contract as a sponsor with the Weber County Dairy Days. We get recognized as a major sponsor, and in trade we give them a discount on some of our rates.
Awesome.
This is and Mr. Olson, why don't you go ahead and while you're at the mic, we'll just do this approval. If it's okay with the other two commissioners, we'll go ahead and present item number 6 as well, please.
And number 6 is our contract with the Utah Quarter Horse Racing Association. We're excited to bring them back to our world-class racetrack. And our contract with them is geared around competitive rates with some of our competitors to make sure we're staying competitive with the people around us, but also bringing them in and being a sponsor for this great race.
Perfect. Are there any comments, commissioners, on either of the two?
Not sure about the quarter horse racing,
Just thinking I'll bet you take 5.
but I do know that Dairy Days is a great homegrown event, another one that began right here, and I love dairy cows.
I didn't know. That's new to me.
Maybe we should have quarter horse dairy races.
There's an idea. I'm going to put that in the book.
I love the fact that we find a way to augment our community. When we have, for instance, with Dairy Days, a lot of people forget that Weber County was one of the true hotbeds of dairy activity for many, many years. Still has quite a bit, but the great processing plant, Cream Weber, of course, had its name because it began right here and had a place to go because of the opportunity to find local produced dairy product. And so it's always good to magnify what our community looks like. So
That's terrific. And the best part about especially number 5 for the Dairy Days is it involves a lot of youth.
Yes.
And that to perpetuate the bovine industry, and it's great. I can, just one more question on item number 6, Mr. Olson. There was another race that you talked about relocating here. I know that some of these races have a significant amount of added money. One with the Cap Construction brings some with the Jake Cap Memorial. But is there any other announcement that can be made with regards to other races that may be coming here?
Not with the flat track as of right now. We've got a couple meetings set up with the Utah Quarter Horse Racing Association to discuss some future possibilities. We're also trying to convince the Bitterroot to give us a shot, which is one of Idaho's longest standing horse races. We do also have the Chariot State Finals and World Championships coming up, so our track's getting its money's worth.
Very good.
and again, I think it's important to recognize that our facility is uniquely positioned for those types of events. It's I think the best in the Intermountain West from everything I've been able to see. And
The best.
I agree.
In as much as we've had your presentation combined, we will take a vote on each one. So we'll vote on number 5 first. I'll entertain a motion. The motion can be together. Thank you, Fatima.
I'll make a motion we approve items number 5 and 6 contracts for the Dairy Days and for the flat track races.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no more discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7. This is a request for approval of a resolution of the County Commissioners, Weber County, approving the Weber Area Council of Governments recommending Mr. Toby Molesky as the new representative on the Utah Transit Authority's Board of Trustees. This is presented by us as commissioners, and I want to just first say that it was a challenge to us to move this along as quickly as possible just last week. So in our next commission meeting, we've got this done, and thanks to the work that has been done to get this moved along quickly, so we have representation at UTA. Is there any one of the two of you that would like to take this?
I think we can handle this fairly quickly. I think we ran into a procedural error that legal was concerned with, and so in order to move this along appropriately, we had to put it off for 1 week. We assured all of the mayors and Mr. Molesky that the attempt was to do this correctly, and that we have done that. We've met the state statutes, and so at this point we have a majority of the mayors that have signed, and I think we're ready to approve this resolution and move forward the official appointment. Unless there's some further discussion, I'll be happy to make a motion on the resolution.
No other discussion. I'll accept that as a motion.
Number on the resolution?
10.
10. I'll second the motion if it's been made.
We have a motion and a second for resolution number 10. All in favor?
Aye. Roll call. Oops.
Aye.
Sorry.
Aye.
Aye. I'll get that one of these days.
I'll still vote. Yes. Either way.
The motion carries unanimously. Item number H is the time for public comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Is there anyone in the public that would like to say anything?
That includes commissioners limiting their comments to 3 minutes.
I'll try to keep it to 3 minutes, but it's really hard. There's so much on your agenda. Thank you for having an efficient meeting. Considering the number of items that you dealt with today, I would say a very efficient meeting. And thank you to your staff. They're always professional, they're always prepared, and they're always impartial. So I just want to first recognize them, appreciate them. Thoughts. I have thoughts on every...
I'm sorry. Could you...
Oh, I apologize. I am Lori Brinkerhoff, 6205 West, 4700 South, Hooper, Utah. I will try to limit my comments to 3 minutes, but let's go item by item if we can really quickly. Great presentation by Holland and Matt Hilburn. So much that can be done for the pro-business environment. Just to follow up with some of the comments there, you know, do we have promoters or detractors? And as I have worked with Weber School District in looking, and also I've been Utah PTA Region Director, meaning I worked with 53 schools. I worked with Ogden School District, Morgan School District, and Weber School District. And something that they've made me aware of that would contribute to the conversation is the jobs our children will be working on in 10 years do not currently exist. That is how technology is updating. So we constantly have to think forward as far as job development and workforce. And you know, I understand the concern about farming. I'm raised in a farming community. I grew up married to a man from a Wyoming farm who milked a cow every morning. He thinks our children should be milking a cow every morning, and yet he realized farming was a dying way, and so he went and got a college education. He got his bachelor's in pharmacy. He still would like to be a farmer. He still wants to buy 100 acres just for fun. But the jobs of the future, and I think we've seen out in Hooper City, as I've said on Hooper City Council, farms are diminishing. It's been painful to see as we had to make so many decisions as far as zoning and rezoning and going from agricultural to residential. That was the number one question. What is good for the farmer? And farmers cannot afford to farm. Their children do not want to farm, their grandchildren. So I believe as you look out and look at Hooper, what we've done the last 4 years, I think we got it right. I think we got it right in some of our major developments, which PRUDs. We've dealt with clustering ordinances, and I think we have some great models out there. So if you haven't been out to Hooper recently, drive out there. We have a nice blend. And preservation of open space, but the number one priority should always be in Weber County is job, workforce. Also, sorry, I could go on all day, but another thinking is Jim asked the question, Matt asked the question, why is Utah County getting more or winning more jobs and contracts? Could I suggest because they're working as a team? I would suggest that what is good for Ogden City is good for Weber County. What is good for Weber County is good for Ogden City. As I sit in the WACOG meetings and I listen to the 15 mayors, and I'm prepared to say this next week at WACOG meeting, it feels like a lot of the cities are just shooting each other in the foot. We seek to injure each other than work together. I think we need to build a team, and we have the capabilities. We have Weber State. I've spoke with Brad Mortensen at Weber State. We have OWATC. We do have a great investment in transportation and infrastructure, but what we need to do is recognize that team and work together. That way we can effectively bring the pro-business environment that is needed right now. And we have such a great opportunity to do that within Weber County. So I'm really hurrying. I really am, I promise. Looking at some of these other discussions, I applaud you for your approval of the resolution, Weber County Health Commission, and realignment of that board. It's been needed for quite some time. Obviously, it was a little top-heavy in the legislative area. I think we need to seek experts within a certain area, meaning diesel emission testing. We need to look at the health experts in that area. Obviously, the commissioner should have a say. That's tax money being committed, but it was too heavy on the legislative end. We need to seek input from those who have great knowledge in that background. So thank you for that action. I think it was brilliant. In fact, I spoke with Brian Benyon about that on Friday, and he said, what is your idea? How do you feel about this? I said, you're moving in the right direction. So thank you for that action. Also, thank you for the Weber County Veterans Advisory Committee. My grandfather was a veteran. He served in World War II. He was a Cherokee. So as a Cherokee, they were sent to, he peeled a lot of potatoes, but he also operated an artillery gun. So I have great appreciation for the veterans. My father-in-law is a veteran. I have a veteran who is a neighbor, Kim Vaughn, veteran of Vietnam. I see the man suffer every day from the shock, the post-traumatic stress syndrome. So thank you for being aware and doing everything you can to promote for the care, long-term care of our veterans. And also, last item, I promise. The request for the approval of the resolution of Weber County Commission and the Weber WCOG with Toby Mileski, thank you for that. Toby will represent well. I believe that we need to get it right the first time. So if there was a delay in the legal counsel, thank you for clarifying that once again. Our legal counsel are brilliant. They want to get it right the first time, and just make you aware about the UTA restructuring task force that was presented this last Thursday by Mike Schultz. Mike is a Hooper resident as I am, and I text him every day, Mike, where is this in the legislation? They're presenting again this week. I am confident we will see the UTA restructure this legislative session. But until then, Toby will represent WCOG in that function.
Thank you.
And then also, my very, very last thought, I promise. Often, I had the opportunity to visit with Commissioner Gibson about my intentions to run for his position. I think he's been well aware of this. It was a hard decision to make as I was working on the city council clear last June. You have to decide if you're going to refile for your current position. So I decided last June to not refile, knowing my intention was to seek for County Commission Seat B. Then I had the opportunity to visit with Commissioner Gibson in November in his office. We had a really good personal visit about my intentions, that it wasn't a personal target towards him. It's just something that's been on my horizon for quite some time. But I am very aware that as you serve as a public servant, often you will find yourself, just by throwing my name out there, I'm a center of controversy. So I just want to remind you that often we have to ask ourselves, is it wisdom? And do we create some of this controversy surrounding our names? Or, and just know that as a public servant, your life is in public. And I accept that as we go forward. And I appreciate all of you for living your life in public at times, as that is part of being a public servant. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments today? Ms. Hallisey.
Thank you, Commissioners. I just want to say this meeting started out on a very positive note, and I'd like to leave it on a positive note. The community development is very exciting. People often ask me if I'd ever consider leaving Weber County, and the answer has always been no. Where else can you live that you have winter, spring, summer, and fall with all of the stuff that goes with it? Too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter with snow. But I also appreciate that we now have a hallway in Weber County in the Weber Center that's for the arts. And we also have the opportunity to go to corn mazes out west when it's autumn. So I just appreciate that so much. And I think the most important thing is that we have 3 commissioners who genuinely care about this community. And I want to thank the 3 of you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Looks like the public comment section is closed.
Sorry. It's still open.
I didn't hear the motion for the...
That's okay. It's still open.
Thank you, Toby Molesky, 3325 North, 1000 West of Pleasant View. Thanks for moving that along for me, Commissioner, so I can get to work.
Thank you for your work behind the scenes.
There are some interesting things coming forward from UTA, good and bad. And along with that, I didn't see Commissioner Harvey, or he didn't maybe see me, but I did see Commissioner Ebert down last Thursday for that meeting. Was it Thursday morning? For the task force meeting, and that was very well attended, I thought, and there's been a lot of controversy that's come out of that as well, and that's going to be good to see some changes there. So I just want to say thank you, and you guys have a good weekend.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Go get to work now. Fix UTA.
We're only 4 days away from the weekend, but we'll look forward to that. Mayor. Thank you.
Who did you bring with you today, Mr. Molesky?
Thank you, Commissioner Harvey.
Yeah.
Chair Harvey.
I also wanted to thank my friend Lori Fleming from Riverdale for coming down to support me today. She, first meeting, right? First meeting. She had a lot of questions. So if we had a handbook, we could explain a lot of the things. It would be very helpful. Thank you.
Super. I'll entertain a motion for our last item.
Let me make one comment real quick, and that is simply, first of all, I think this public comment thing has always been a challenge from a legal perspective, right? Because we've been advised that it's very difficult from a legal perspective where something is not posted on the agenda yet is brought up in public comment, whereas the line that we can actually discuss that, it becomes a challenge. And so there's a lot of things that have been said over the last couple of months in public comment, some that are appropriate and some that are clearly not appropriate. I think under the state statute and the state law. I would just like to request, Commissioner Chair Harvey, that you do some research. Maybe as the chair, this is your first opportunity as chair to serve, and I'm hoping that you'll take a look at what types of things might be appropriate, so that you might be able to guide the meeting when a particular line is crossed, so that we could be appropriate in those things that are mentioned that we should or shouldn't respond to, number one, and number two, that that we can be productive in doing the county's business, and most of all be legal in the way that we do so. But again, in closing, I just have one comment, and it's just one thing that I have to say about when someone says that agriculture and farming is a dying breed or a dying industry, that's probably going to make me think a little bit, because I eat more than I've ever eaten before. and as far as I will just leave it at that and say that that anytime we start to think that agriculture is any less important because it's been around a long time, I think we're probably missing the boat. Let's remember that agriculture, just like any other industry, is a changing industry. It's one in which we have to be innovative and smart, and anybody who does that, or let's say anybody who is in that industry who isn't innovative and smart and able to change and move forward very quickly, will not be in agriculture for long. There is no question. But it is more critical, or as critical, more than ever before, because of the growing world population, and that is the one need that we will never, ever be able to do without. So I hope that as we leave here today, it's been a while since I've had a meal. I'm really hungry, and I'm hoping that as I enjoy that meal, I will remember the sacrifice, much like our veterans, of those who toil for us, that we might have a safe, affordable food supply right here locally within our community. So thanks again, Mr. Chairman.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you.